Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mentor Me Collective podcast. I am your host, Chanel, and the CEO and founder of the Mentor Me Collective, formerly known as the Mentor Me Chanel. I'm super excited because we are raising the next generation of tech. But first, the way that we want to do that is by introducing a collective of amazing folks to join in the space. And today, I have an amazing special guest who is actually pivotal in my career and even being a career coach, mentor, all the things. I remember when I was going through so much and trying to figure out my way, and I connected with Felanice. And when I tell you she was a divine angel from above, with giving me clear insight, wisdom, support, understanding, all the things. So I am so excited to introduce you to Miss Felanice Yancey. She is absolutely amazing, doing some incredible work in the tech space. So welcome, Felanice.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited as well. And y'all, when I tell you she is the epitome of Black girl magic, I mean, she does it all and does it so elegantly and so well. So I'm excited to lean in. So Felanice, tell the people a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your journey and how you even made it to the current role that you're in now.
Oh my gosh, my journey is so long. We only have so many minutes.
Try to give us the Cliff Notes version. Cliff Notes.
I give you guys a Cliff Notes version. So I am currently a program manager for Microsoft, and I work on compliant AI platform in the area of artificial intelligence, machine learning for our M365 product line. And if you've heard about Word and Outlook and Excel, all of that's a part of the M365 product line. So a lot about what I do, I can't really kind of disclose a lot of it because it's kind of compliant. And
gotcha.
I did include NDA disclosure.
I know that's right. Your girl got NDAs, honey. Yes.
A lot about what we do is personalization. We try to make sure that our customers have products that are personalized for their experience, which I think is a wonderful thing. But previously, I was a software engineer. And so I got into software engineering, oh my gosh, at Northrop Grumman. That was like my first corporate software engineering role. But prior to that, I was interning, various places at TRW, which no longer exists, and various networking. I tried all the different fields of engineering to decide that I didn't like certain aspects of engineering, but I did like software engineering. And so let me roll you guys all the way back. So I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning so that I can bring you forward so you can understand my journey.
I am here for it.
When I was 8, I actually knew that I wanted to be an engineer. And I would build these bridges out of popsicle sticks. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but that was like and it was my excuse to eat popsicles. So I would save the sticks and then I would build bridges out of them. And my goal was to always make them very sturdy. And so I remember winning I won the science fair, and my teacher said, "You'll never be an engineer. I don't know why you're trying to be an engineer, but you'll never be an engineer." And at 8 years old, that really crushed my spirit. But then there's this very stubborn side of me that was kind of like, let's challenge. I challenge to actually be an engineer. So I set out on this quest to learn as much as I could. And I would, any type of, there was all these little boys and girls clubs that, back in the day in Chicago, they would kind of cultivate you into engineering a little bit. It was mostly guys, and I would kind of sneak in and be the only girl and try to learn, and I'd eavesdrop and all these good things. But when I went to high school, I went to a science and math high school, Von Steuben Metropolitan Science Center in Chicago. Shout out to the Panthers.
Okay.
And so there I really got this sort of understanding of what do I need to be an engineer? It's called Junior Engineers for Today's Society. I don't even know if they still exist. I need to Google them. But it was a real big thing back in the 90s. And it was a wonderful experience. I actually got to understand more about engineering as a whole, the different types, but they really didn't go into real massive detail about all of the various ways of becoming an engineer. And of course, I had teachers that tell me, you're a girl, it's not really a girl, girl's world, it's a man's world. And so I was, in essence, wanting to break into something that necessarily wasn't for women at the time. And so, lo and behold, I ended up graduating from high school, and I was still trying to figure out my way. I went to an HBCU, Russ College, and I was kind of leaning still in the engineering, but trying to figure out if I wanted to do medicine as well. And so I was trying to find programs that could merge the two together. And at that time, they didn't have the ability to merge engineering and medicine to have sort of this, unique technical aspect that embedded science with it. And so I went back to Chicago. I was so poor. We didn't have money to go to school. And so I went back to Chicago, and I went to Illinois Institute of Technology and studied electrical and computer engineering.
Wow.
And I had to work. So I worked 3 jobs and I went to school. And
3 jobs, Fel?
3 jobs, 3. And so trying to hold down an
Wow.
engineering degree with 3 jobs is very intense. It's almost non-existent. People just don't.
Wow.
And so I was having to make a decision on, my grade, the dean's list. So my grades are now like, B's, C's. And that's really not what you want in engineering. So, I was basically told, hey, switch your major to biology, something that's easier, and, or leave school.
Wow.
You're just not cut out. And so I was sort of forced out of school, even though my grades were still very good. They were still good enough to stay in school. Um, I was forced out. And so I literally left school,
Wow.
and I was devastated. I moved to California, and I worked for UCLA. And I worked for a doctor, Dr. Duncan McBride. I'll never forget it. And I redid his entire database to keep
What?
patients. So, I wanted a faster way, an easier way to find patients and to put them into it.
Fel, stop playing. Are you for real? This is insane.
True story. And at first I thought I was going to be yelled at. I thought I was going to be fired because I'm like, redoing this man's entire, database. Like, who does that? And so I was nervous. And so when I went into his office, he's like, "You did this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And he was like, "Very good." Like people, are excited. I basically trained the staff how to use this database. And so he encouraged me to go back to school. And I applied. I randomized and picked a school, California State University, Dominguez Hills in Los Angeles. And if you're from California, you will definitely know what I'm talking about. It is the number one Black public school in the state of California.
Wow.
And so I went there. And while I was, still working at UCLA, and I applied, and I go, I want to do computer science. I've already done electrical and computer engineering. I want to do computer science. And the dean looked at me and said, "Absolutely not."
Wow.
So it's like, "Why?" And he said, "Well, you won't survive. You're an
Wow.
African American female. This program is full of men. You will not fail. You will not win. You will fail." So I was like, "I'm
Wow.
gonna fail." I mean, to hear a dean say that, I was crushed. And there was nothing I could do. I mean, you talk about those microaggressions, they were real in my life.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I wasn't able to do anything about it. There was nobody who really saw that, oh, this Black girl wanting to do engineering, just go and do business. That's what everybody told me. Just
Wow.
go on over to the business side and just do that and call it a day. But I really wanted to be an engineer, and I really wanted to be at this school because it gave me that sort of that HBCU feel, but at a public school. And so I stayed, and I transferred over to the School of Business, and I was a computer information systems major. So I took Java and C++. I took programming inside of that degree. And I decided to seek out internships to help me before I graduated. It wasn't a requirement back then. Now it's a requirement. But back then, you could just graduate and look for a job. Now you actually have to have, some sort of training, formal training. And so I interned at GE, and I worked at, various hospitals doing networking, computer engineering, those sorts of things. And I decided that, I wanted to work for Northrop Grumman. That was where I set my sights on. And
So, Fel, wait, we gotta pause. So, you mean to tell me you've gone from a little girl building with popsicle sticks,
yes,
having middle school and elementary school teachers tell you not to go into this field, then going into college, doing it, interning, redoing databases, now doing it on this new level, and you're now pursuing a degree in, you said, computer and information systems?
at this point, I'm doing computer information systems.
This is insane, Fel.
And
These
so,
people telling you no, and you like yes, 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 and again yes. So tell me more. Tell me more.
so I took an Oracle class, and then, I don't know how many people still take Oracle in school, but at that time I had to take Oracle. And so data science was not a thing in the early 2000s. Like, it was just nothing.
Wow.
Like, nobody cared about data science. And it's because they didn't see the importance of data science at the time.
Wow.
So when I was taking Oracle, my teacher impressed upon me a skill. She said, Felanice, you are extremely bright. What I want you to know is that you need to be able to articulate information. You don't have to sound super intelligent and use all these big words. What you do need to know is that you need to be a people person, and you need to be able to display and disseminate information so that people can digest it. And so I always kept that in the back of my head, and to be humble and to always sort of like use layman terms. I never really talk super, super, techie. And so sometimes it was a curse and a blessing. In some aspects, people wouldn't really want to hear what I had to say. But then in other aspects, I was able to relate to people. And so, needless to say, the month I was like a month and a half before I graduated, Northrop Grumman came to my school, and I interviewed with them. And I remember it so well because it was my birthday. And I walked into the interview room, and I'm like, it's my birthday. And they're looking at me like, are you ready for this interview? Come on. I interview, and like literally right after the interview, the manager looks at me. She goes, unofficially, welcome to Northrop Grumman.
What?
And I was so stoked, but I couldn't say anything to anybody because I wanted the official papers, and I was super excited, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna work at Northrop Grumman. I was just getting super excited. But it was like all my hard work and everything, and this business major, was now converted to engineering, like working for an engineering company. Like, how smooth is this? But here's the caveat. The craziest thing, they're like, oh, but we don't have any software engineering roles available, so you'll have to start out as a buyer.
Girl, stop playing with me.
I was crushed. Let me tell you, I was crushed. But I don't know if anybody's listening that believes in God or believes that things happen for a reason. But let me just tell you this story. I literally had a dream, and I heard God say, in 1 year's time, I will switch you to engineering.
Wow.
Take the job. It was way less than all the offers that I had. To take this job, it was like, are you insane? Are you crazy? Why would you do this? But I just knew that it was going to be a bigger blessing in the end for me. Well, I took the job. I was paid, it was like 40 grand. I'm telling you, it was so low. So low, Chanel. It was so low. And needless to say, the following year, I ended up being pushed into engineering because the boss that hired me was like, you're always trying to fix things and figure things out. I need you to apply for engineering roles while I'm still here because I'm retiring, and I want to be able to give you a good reference. So
What?
yes, this was how amazing. I mean, everything was so amazing. It was, when I look back on it, I still get chills. And I applied and I met two mentors. Her name is Cecilia Harrison, and she's listening. Hi, Cecilia, I miss you. She was an amazing mentor. She poured into my life, and we talked extensively about what is it that you want to do, and believing in myself, and helping me to see it, and write that vision, what I want it to be and what I want it to do. And
Wow.
so she had an opening on her team, and she recommended me. And I interviewed, and it was like magic. I got the job, I got my security clearance, and I got
What?
40% increase in my pay. It was amazing.
Oh my gosh,
And
Sal.
so I was I was like, this is not happening. Like, is this really happening for me? And so I started to encourage other people that, sort of felt like I did, and with that being said, it's like, a 40% increase is almost unheard of. And most people don't get that kind of jump in their
At
salary.
all.
And to see that kind of favor that was on my life at that time was
Jesus.
so amazing and so beautiful, and yet still so scary, because I was still going through discrimination. I was still going through racism. People didn't want to see me be an engineer. They didn't believe in me as much. And then there were people that did. And so I had to remain focused on what I really wanted versus what people were saying.
Now that's a good thing. Let's pause there. Fel, so first of all, you have this amazing mentor. The mentor is like, listen, I want to make sure that you get a good role before I retire. You get this role, 40% increase. But even before then, the mentor asks you to vision cast, like write down what you want. And then now focus is something that's on the forefront. So how did you come to a place of almost like silencing all these other chatter boxes around you and remaining focused on the goal? Because God told you this, and I could imagine it's been a couple years since that, since him telling you this. I would love to hear how you
It was
stay
the very
focused.
next year. It was the very next
The
year.
next year, my God, my God, my God.
It was the very next year.
Jesus.
Literally 1 year after I started.
Oh my gosh,
And
Felanice.
I was, I had just had to stay focused. It was, when I say, so many people told me I couldn't. So many people told me I was just stupid for wanting to chase that dream. You could be a doctor, you could be so many other things. You could be an attorney. People were just throwing careers out, but none of them was what I wanted. And so I was like, I really want engineering. This was something that I dreamed of, and something that I really feel that I am called to be, and graced to be. And so my very first project, was working for, a NASA project, and it was super fun and super exciting. But it was in that role that I got to experience people who did not want to see me succeed. And I was assigned some, mentors and, onboarding buddies, and no one helped. I had a project that I had to deliver on, and I had to do it without anyone there. And I remember my manager at the time, he was African American, and he said, no one wants to see you succeed. So you're going to have to dig deep within yourself and make this dream a reality, and show people that you are more than worthy. And so I did. And I finished the project on time, within the allotted schedule. And I went on to work on landmines. That was probably my favorite project to work on. And I also went on to work on the space shuttle. Um, but in doing so, I challenged myself to consistently move beyond what people said, move beyond what people thought about me, or how they saw me. I had people tell me I was stupid. You're stupid. You'll never be a great engineer. And it's hurtful to hear those things. And it took me a long time to actually come to grips with these words that were spoken. It gives you such an imposter syndrome. If you think about it. If you think about how people, speak into your life, those words, they take shape at some form, and you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt, can you make it? Are you really this dumb? Can you do this work? Because there's so many facets of engineering. I mean, think about it. The space shuttle
Wow.
itself, you could die. If you don't do something correctly, there's no way to hit somebody in the face, like
That's true.
that's it. Um, and it was hardware. And that was the first time I ever worked on hardware. And I remember, people telling me that I couldn't do it. They was like, there's no way you've been a software engineer. There's no way you're going to be able to learn hardware. And I did. And not only that, what I learned was that when you learn something, you teach someone else. And when you teach someone else, you remember. And as a result, I became really good at hardware, which is where I work now at Microsoft in hardware.
Wow.
So it paved the way for me, for Microsoft, which I truly believe that door was open for me. But all that to say is that while I was at my tenure at Northrop Grumman, I there were times I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to try various aspects of engineering. So I did systems engineering, I did test engineering, I did software engineering, I did so many different sectors of engineering. And I decided what I liked and what I didn't like. And
Wow.
I wasn't necessarily my boss, Andy Wee. I will never forget him because he taught me so much at Northrop Grumman. I'm sure he's pretty retired right now. But he told me, you have a lot of different talents. He said, I think that the problem is that you're so incredibly smart that people don't know what to do with you.
Mm.
I was like, what? Like, Devin, should I be devastated? Should I be excited? I don't know how to feel right now. This person is
Wow.
telling me that I'm good. And he said, you're like a jack of all trades. That's what I would classify you as.
Wow.
You don't necessarily, you're not the best programmer, but you're not the worst. And
Wow.
you know how to, databases, you know how to write. He's like, Felanice, there's so many wonderful skills about you, and I plan to maximize all of those skills. So he did. And in doing so, I learned a lot about program management. It was like a learning on the job. Program
Wow.
management. I'm learning. I don't have a degree in program management. I never took any formal training in program management. I just learned from my boss. Um, do I suck at it sometimes? Probably, yes. I'm sure. I'm always learning from my mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes and I learn from them. Um, but I think the journey and the goal is to keep discovering who you are and moving towards a direction. I think if I had stopped, I probably would not be here. But flash forward, I left Northrop Grumman and I went to another aerospace company who will remain nameless, and I went through a lot of discrimination at this particular company, which is why they will remain nameless.
Mm.
And I, I developed lupus, and so I had to stop working. And so I stopped working for about 7 years, and I was devastated. I didn't know if I would ever be an engineer again. I didn't know if I would ever have the mental capacity to learn all of this high tech information. And so my doctors, told me your memory's operating at 9% felonies. So you won't ever work again. And it was the word
Wow.
ever that kind of stuck with me. That I was like, no, there's no such thing as ever unless I'm dead. And so
Mm.
and so I decided to put a plan. I put a medical plan in place for myself, and I started reading 6 hours a day. It hurt my brain because lupus affects various parts of you. My brain was one of them. And it literally hurt to read. It was that painful. And so, but what was happening was my brain was being stretched. And the more I read, the better my memory became. And then I put myself back to school and decided to get a second master's. So all while this is going on. And, my doctor's is looking at me like, you're insane. You like, I don't know what you're doing, but you might as well just stay at home and just, just be okay with the fact that you're still alive. And it just wasn't good enough for me. So I found some programs. I started doing some research. I love research. And I started doing research on programs that involve lupus and scholarships. And I found a Google scholarship. Shout out to Google. And it was for people with disabilities. And the scholarship still exists today. I applied. I was a recipient in 2016. Wow. And it's called the Google Line Scholarship. And I was shocked because I almost didn't apply. I was like, there's going to be people. There was at least 10,000 people that applied, and I was one of them.
Wow, Fel.
I think it was like less than 100 of us that got a scholarship. Like, it was not that many people. And so I just remembered feeling that, I put my heart into filling out the application and answering the questions. And I ended up, ultimately with the scholarship. And it opened so many doors. And after that, I ended up at a conference, disability conference. And the disability conference, I'm trying to do this as quickly as I can. Disability conference, I interviewed with, 20 companies or so. I had no idea who I was interviewing with when I went. I should feel shame, but I don't. Because I am horrible with email. I am not the person I don't love email unless it's work. And so I inadvertently did not read my email and had no idea that I was interviewing for 20 companies. So I'm literally interviewing for all these people on the spot. Thank God for the gift of gab.
Okay.
People loving me. I ended up with 13 offers. It was crazy. But that was one of those offers. And I ended up, I told them, hey, I don't want to work for you full time yet. I want to see how my body reacts. Can we do an internship first? And they said, okay. So I did an internship in 2018. And then I came back to work for them full time in 2019. But I say all that to say is I'm now getting a PhD in data science, which is, that oracle love that I had before. And I may teach someday. That's, that may be my next thing when I do, because I enjoy giving back. But I when I look back on my journey, it was a very difficult journey. It was a very hard journey, and it was not something that I am proud of, but it's my journey, and it made me who I am today. So,
Phil, that is so. I mean, y'all. I have no words. I'm so speechless. I feel like, you represent so many people. Like, you know what I mean? Like the I'm everyone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like you represent all of us, because I can definitely say, even for me, being in this new space of engineering, it is very different from that of design and user experience research, and definitely have had my experiences already with folks definitely telling me you can't, or making me, feel like I don't belong. And even honestly, like everything you were just saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, Phil, like I'm literally going through that right now in regards to doing this project and having a deadline, and people supposed to be helping you, but they're not really helping you. You know what I mean? So I feel like if for all of those who are listening to this podcast, and especially this episode, I feel like the theme of this is saying, like, you can. Everyone else is saying you can't, but you can. And you have what it takes within you. So don't allow yourself to be limited by the perspective of other people. Exactly. I'm so overwhelmed. I mean, I know we're talking a lot about this, but I would love for us to segue a little bit more in telling us about, or maybe giving tips, right, for those who are entering into this new field of engineering. Obviously, it's a bit different in regards to having more, or a little bit more. I'm gonna say that because there ain't that many more women in diversity, to be honest. But there's a little bit more color, a little bit more spice happening over here. So, what would be your form of advice that you would give those newly entering the space right now as an engineer and/or a PM?
So, what I just recently did for myself was not inadvertently, but I just randomly enrolled in a cohort. I got selected for a cohort for University of Washington. They have a product management.
Whoop, whoop.
And they basically sort of give you, informal teaching on how to succeed as a product manager or program manager, whichever one the company uses. And so I found that that has been really helpful for me because I'm learning as I go. I mean, I think the hardest part for me is that, you know, there's no formal training on what is a great program manager. Like, what does that look like? Um, because every company is different, and so you're going to learn on the job. But I think I think that if companies would look at these core things, what do you need? Are there templates when you, as a new hire, that you need to know? Do we have, a certain method of how we, um, collaborate? Is there, do we talk in, what language do we talk in? First of all, because you could be saying something and not really be speaking the language that the engineers are speaking, and you sound stupid to them.
So that's a
And
whole word.
that's it's true. And if you cannot relate to the people that you're working with, then it's almost like you have to buy. It's like a buy-in. They have to believe in you and trust you, and you're this minor person on the scale, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, what have you done that's going to make me believe in you? And people want you to send a lot of emails. They want you. You have to understand what corporate America wants you to do, and there's that imposter syndrome of not wanting to make a mistake because you don't feel good enough. You don't feel worthy anyway. And so now you're having to work through all of these issues in order for you to succeed. So I would say if you can take some sort of training, do it, because I think it doesn't hurt. It helps. But if you don't, if you're, you got a job and now you got to perform, then you ask a lot of questions. Try and figure it out. That's my advice.
I would love to hear your thoughts on, like, how did you know it was time to transition to experience another form of engineering, right? Like, how did you come to, like, obviously you get into this role, for instance, software engineering, and at like X amount of time you're saying it's time for a new thing. Like, how did you recognize within yourself that it was time for a new challenge?
I don't think it was anything in me that says, oh my gosh, it's time. It was just a challenge that I put on myself. It's like I never wanted people to say what I couldn't do. So I became more of a jack of all trades. And so I could talk about various aspects of engineering. Not necessarily that I could super deep dive into them, but I think the space shuttle I was able to super deep dive because I was in the project for a very long time, and I was able to really get good at my craft during that time, and also the landmines because I designed them. But I think that you basically decide, I want to do XYZ. Some people decide they only want to do software engineering, and that's it. That's all they want to know. But I think it's an individual thing. How you feel about yourself. What is it that you want to? What purpose do you want to give back to the world? I look at my life and I say, there's more to me. There's more things that I want to learn. There's more things. There's more aspects of me that I want to grow in. I want to be a great data scientist as well. How do I do that? I'm getting a PhD. So I never wanted people to tell. I think the word no kind of pushed me into, I'm going to get all the degrees and no one's going to be able to tell me where I can't go or what I can't do because knowledge is free. And once I own it in my brain, you can't take it from me. So,
oh, that's good. Knowledge is free. That is so good. That is so good. Also, like, for instance, for me, right? I'm really enjoying software engineering and learning more. But like you just mentioned, like there are parts of me that desires to or is curious about the different realms of the space, and not just engineering, but just tech, right? Like, what does this look like to be in operations, or what does this look like to do, like, sales and things like that, just to understand like the parts of the business. So what about, like, for those folks who are looking to kind of even get more knowledge in those spaces, like what kind of advice would you give to those people?
read about it. Like sales wasn't. I know so much about myself to know that I don't like sales. Operations doesn't even remotely touch me at all. There's certain aspects of tech that just do not. And so I think that you try to read about those. Out there at one point I wanted to do some children's books, and I still may venture on that path to educate them on every single aspect of engineering. But I think that if you say, "Hey, I want to do operations," learn about it, read articles. Medium is a great one. Read blogs, read about it, so that you're not just thrust into operations and then you decide, "Oh my gosh, I hate this." It may not be for you, you know. But also knowing who you are and knowing what you like. I don't like sales, so there's no way I would ever want to work. I don't like sales. I don't like marketing. I would never want I would never want to be a program manager in those areas because I would be so traumatized by my bachelor's degree that I just be thinking back to the days I hated marketing. So, so you have to be real with yourself. I think that's a part of it is being who you are and not just doing a role just because you feel like it's the role you should have or it's the first job you have. If you're going to hate it, what's the point?
That's so good. Oh, Felanice, I got all these questions bubbling in my head because you're just hitting on so many like topics that are so close to home, and especially in this unique space that I'm currently in right now, in my role. I would love for you to how did you get to this space of feeling and being confident in who you are? How did you discover all of who you are? Was this like a long journey, or was this something that like was like a year or two? Because child, I'm still, and even though like yes, Chanel, the CEO, the founder, the this, the that, like I'm still trying to figure out all of me. And so I would love to know what was that journey like for you?
I'm still trying to figure me out. I mean, if I may be honest, there's still aspects of me that I'm still growing in. And I think that the goal in life is to never stop growing, to never stop learning. I remember Cicely Tyson talking about, people asked her why was she still acting, and she was almost 100. And she said, I believe that God has called me to do a thing, and that is acting. And when he's done and when it's time for me to be finished, I'll leave this earth.
Wow.
But you don't stop learning, you don't stop growing, you don't stop working until your time is up. And I'll never forget that. But so I feel like that. I feel that you should always keep learning, you should always keep growing. And do I fail a lot? I fail all the time. It's insane how much I fail. And there are times I beat myself up, or sometimes I'm my own worst critic. But moving beyond what people say, I mean, I think as a person of color, like you just get used to it. It's sad. It's a sad reality that racism has been prevalent for so many years. Discrimination has been prevalent for so many years, and unfortunately, in the workplace, we've had to endure that. And so, I'd like to think that I've paved the way for your generation because I'm older. I'd like to think that I've paved the way for your generation in some shape, form, or fashion. To help you so that you don't have to go through some of the things that I've gone through. But I think that you have to have conversations with yourself. You have to tell yourself that you're good enough, that you belong, that you're worthy.
Wow. And you know what, Fel, I definitely want to take time to say this. Like I am truly, and I'm not just saying this for the podcast. I'm so honored to have crossed paths with you, because last year I actually met Fel last year. I was going through this space where I just didn't know what to do. I definitely was in a space of knowing that I wanted to do something, especially when it came to impacting my community, the Black community, but was feeling very overwhelmed by like, what others may say, or also failing, right? Failing forward, and feeling overwhelmed by like, what does that look like? What does the process of getting up look like? Maybe I'm overthinking, but or I was overthinking.
What does the process look like? It means you take one step and then the next step and then the next step. But it does not mean that you won't fall. And
Wow.
sometimes you stumble. So it's not necessarily, sometimes you don't always fall. Sometimes you stumble. And then
Wow.
you get back up. I mean, imagine not working for 7 years.
Wow.
That was difficult, very challenging. It was a very arduous time in my life. And having to fight with the long-term disability plan, and that's a whole nother other podcast. But
Child.
the point is to keep moving forward. Maybe
Wow.
you stop for a little while. Maybe you regroup. Maybe you try and figure it out. Maybe you do some reading. Maybe you go back to school, but never stop learning. I think that's always been at the forefront of who I am. Is I love to learn, and I think that it is a game changer.
And that's so beautiful, Fel. I mean, like, man, and even again, just going back to what I was saying earlier, like I can say sometimes for me, like learning, it's just sometimes it gives me anxiety. There was a time in my life where I love to learn, love to research, love to read, but now it's like my mind is constantly going at like 1,000. That I'm like, oh gosh, there's more I have to squeeze in this brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, so to hear you talk about your story in a way that's like, listen, like it literally hurt to read, but I was determined to stretch. I was determined to grow. I was determined to evolve. That really, oh my gosh, I feel like this podcast was definitely intentional by God Himself because He knew what I was just going through mentally in my mind about a whole bunch of things that are going on for work, things like this for the podcast, the business, and all the things. But I'm just so honored. I mean, I feel like wow, just your story, your tenacity. You also encouraging us to continue to have that tenacity. And child, don't think about those other people who got stuff to say. I don't know. Honestly, Felanice, I'm really overwhelmed because I feel like you are answering all the prayers that I've been praying this week.
Well, thank you. I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna have challenges. You're gonna have people that don't like you, but you will also have people that do, and you will also have favor on your life. I thank God. Some people, to those that don't believe, that this is not a pun intended to you, but I
Mhm.
believe, and I truly thank God
And I do too.
for His grace, His mercy, and His love, and more importantly, His favor that He has
Wow.
placed upon my life. And I say that because people think of favor as a way of money. Sometimes favor
Mm.
is that you get that job that you've been wanting, or you get that raise or that promotion, or somebody knows about a role that you would be great for. This favor comes in many, many forms. And so I think the key is to be sensitive to the way in which your life changes. I think that I've always been sensitive to shifts. There's a time when I can feel when my life does need to shift. um there are aspects where things don't go right. Everything's
Wow.
kind of in an uproar, and I know that it's time to make a change. But I also don't feel that, I feel that there's some beautiful things about me. Like, I love speaking. I love giving information back to people. And so I also look for ways to let that creative energy out.
Mm.
Like now, this is my way of giving back, and this is my way of educating people. And I'm always available when people need, they want questions answered. My gosh,
That's so
my
true.
LinkedIn blows up all the time.
That is so
Um,
true.
but you have to give back. I think that once you do make it, you give back to. I'm mentoring an 18-year-old right now. Like,
Wow.
it's those things that give me joy and give me pleasure. It's not so much that I work at Microsoft. It's a great gig, but it's not the only gig. I want to be remembered when my life ends. I want to be remembered for being this amazing mentor. I want to be remembered for giving back my time, my energy, my resources to people to help them to get to where they need to be, as I struggled once in my lifetime. Uh, so that's why I do what I do. It's not about being at the biggest tech company. Once you're at one company, you can get to another one. It's no big deal.
Wow.
Um, and that's how you have to see it. Like, it's only
Mm.
money, it's only companies. But what do you want to be remembered for? When you think about your work, How do you want your work to be remembered?
Wow. Wow. That's so powerful. How do you want your work to be remembered?
Anybody could just press numbers and a key on a keyboard, but I mean, do you is that how do you, what impact do you want to make? And I think that's what companies look for too when they hire. What is the value that you give to us? And it has to be a win-win on both from both angles. You give me something, I give you something.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's so powerful. Definitely taking away so much from this conversation, and I feel so full with joy. Feeling like I just drunk a nice, cool glass of water on a hot summer day. Like just feeling renewed and refreshed. And I hope you all are out there too. Definitely know to stay focused. Don't let no one tell you that you can't, because you can. Create the vision, write the vision, and make it plain. That's something that Fel just talked about with her mentor, telling her to write down what are the things that she wants and what does she want to do. Girl, I'm so emotional right now because I'm like, God, you're so kind. Like, you're so intentional. But anyway, y'all, I love me some Jesus. But
Exactly. I
I'm
feel
just
you.
I'm so overwhelmed by your success, your story, but most importantly, just how God is just taking you from point A to point B to point C, and He's still not finished with you. You're such an encouragement. You're a light to this world. And like I said it before, and I'll say it again, like you have been a pronoun and profound pillar in my life, especially when I was going through times of not trying, like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with myself. But God used you to speak life into me, as you have just also done just now. And I'm so honored. I'm so honored to be sharing space with you all. I hope you all are leaning into this and getting into this amazing conversation. Can you imagine that folks like this actually are living and alive and out here really thriving, y'all? So shout out to Fel. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. And y'all, listen, reach out to her. She's absolutely amazing. She's incredible. She's also helped plenty of mentees with roles even at Microsoft. A couple of them actually got roles because of Fel being the amazing woman that she is, and also getting them all the way together too. So I'm so grateful for you, Fel, and would love for you to share like any last words, any thoughts.
Well, I think if anything I could say, it would be you don't have to know everything. I think that sometimes we go to college and we think we have to have everything figured out. You don't. You just need
Mm,
to learn and but be intentional, be strategic about, working and where you want to work because you could work for a company that maybe pays you a lot but doesn't give you much value. Um, and you
mm,
could work for a company that maybe doesn't pay you as much, but you get so much value in what you do, and you're able to sleep at night, and you are able to give back on a daily basis. To me, you have to figure out what you want. Like, it's more than life than making money. I think engineers by default make a lot of money because that's just
mm,
the nature of the beast. But
mm,
it's more than that. It's about the products that you make, the products that your customer gets. And so I would say be intentional about where you work. Research the company. Think about your resume. Think about how you want to stand out. Prepare. I mean, do research on the company that you want to work for. Don't just blindly interview for a company. I think that's a bad idea. And I think
mm,
it's a bad choice because not everybody has the gift of gab. I
mm.
have been fortunate in my life that I do not prepare for interviews. I have never prepared for an interview. But don't do don't do not do what I've done. And it's because, but I have read about companies. I have read about the company that I want to interview for. I just don't overdo it as far as what I need to say. And because I want to sound authentic and I want people to know that it comes from my heart. I never ever want to sound recorded or like I'm reading from a script. Like I no, I just don't think that's a great idea. But I do think you should be intentional about the company that you want to work for. I think you should be intentional about your resume, making sure that your LinkedIn profile represents who you are, and and that you are representing who you are. You don't want to, people use social media so much. And one advice I could give is your social media is being read by companies. And I have seen people destroy themselves because of Instagram, because of Twitter. Um, be mindful. As a person who has a security clearance, I'm always very hidden in certain aspects. Um, but I think that you should be very mindful of how you use your social media, because it could hurt you one day.
No, that's powerful. And absolutely very, very true. It is important for us to be responsible with the platforms that we have, especially because, like you said, professionally, people are now taking deeper dives into
Yep,
who you are. Child, the background check ain't just the background check no more.
I agree.
Honey, there's layers to this. I'm so excited to have had you on, Fel. You are absolutely incredible. Y'all, as y'all can hear, even in my spirit, honey, my spirit is lifted. Huh?
Thank
we
you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I mean, if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. I think it's just Felanice-Yancey. Yeah, I'd be
I
more than
love
happy to answer any
it.
questions anybody has within reason, hopefully.
Absolutely. Make sure y'all come correct, y'all. Okay. Know what you want. Make sure you do your research beforehand. And have some really awesome, thought-provoking questions to ask as well. Because Fella definitely will totally deliver and give you some really great insight and advice and wisdom, honey, and discernment. So
Yes.
I'm so grateful for you. So excited, y'all. We look forward to seeing you all on the next podcast episode. We have more of them dropping every week. So make sure you go ahead and check us out. We're on all the platforms. We do have a Slack community as well. So if you are looking for family to join, like-minded peers and individuals, feel free to find us at mentormecollective.slack.com. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. Make sure you can also reach out to us. All that information also is on our website as well. Looking forward to connecting with each and every one of you. And I pray that you have been blessed, because this has been a conversation that's definitely blessed me. So have a wonderful night, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you at the next podcast.
Thank you for having me.